The Denver Nuggets are off the ledge. They beat the Pistons. What comes next? They turned a corner? It's a blip? Talk about it on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your community. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Thursday night. If you're listening to this on Friday morning, thanks for listening to it. This is going to be your your recap of the Denver Nuggets win over the Detroit Pistons in Detroit, 119-100. They're finally off the snide after losing a whole 4 games in a row. Imagine where we would have said about that like 6 years ago when the Nuggets lost these kinds of stretches all the time. Today's show is brought to you by Ultimate Basketball GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NBA GM and managing your basketball franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimatebasketballgm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, LOCKEDON, in the game. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. Thanks for joining us. Adam Mares off tonight after doing the DNVR postgame show. Make sure to check out Adam Mares over at DNVR for the pre and postgame shows. John Seiken asked in the comments if I have a Red Bull. I'm not even kidding. My wife bought a 20 pack and I was like, that's probably like a lot. I'm trying to like taper off. And she was like, well, I'll just hide them. And I was like, no, don't do that. Like, I'm an adult. Yeah, she hid them. She literally has hidden the Red Bull from me like I am a child to keep me off of the Red Bull consumption, which is probably for the best if anybody that listens to this show. On today's show, we'll talk about the win over the Pistons. Did they actually turn a corner? Christian Braun's spot in the rotation, where the Western Conference is shaping up, all those types of things and more. Let's start right here. Denver Nuggets get the win over the Detroit Pistons, 119-100. In the win, Nikola Jokic goes for 30 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 14 of 18 from the field, including 14 of 17 from two-point range. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who was phenomenal in this game, added 20 points on 7 of 15 shooting, hit 4 threes, breaking off of the snide. Quiet night for Michael Porter Jr. as he only got 15 points, 1 of 6 from 3, but did hit a key one in the fourth quarter. Another quiet night for Aaron Gordon. 15 points, 8 boards for AG, but 6 of 9 from the field is pretty good. Jamal Murray started off hot and then kind of cooled off. 19 points and 10 assists for Jamal. 7 of 15 from the field. It's 19 on 15 shots. Starters all wound up in the way positive thanks to a fourth quarter domination. Bigger than that, though, how about the bench? Christian Braun. 9 points, 3 of 6 shooting, hit a 3, big shot, 3 boards, 2 steals, a block, +9. How about Jeff Green with a +14, 4 boards for Jeff, and made a lot of winning plays in that second half, as well as honestly in the first half as well. Jeff was good tonight, not as good as Christian, but he was good tonight. Thomas Bryant gave finally some good minutes, only scored 3 points, but he was part of that push that they made. Bruce Brown finishes with just 5 points on 2 of 7 shooting, but 5 boards and 4 assists. And the bench all were in the positive. The only player to be in the negative was Ish Smith in the final garbage time, -3. How about the fourth quarter for the Denver Nuggets? As after trailing for almost the entirety of after basically the first quarter, they rattle off a 33-14 demolition in the fourth to restore order and carry it through. The bench sparked momentum and the Nuggets carried it through. The Nuggets looked like themselves in the fourth quarter. That's the first time I have seen since the Memphis game that Denver has looked actually like themselves. That's a big deal. And you're absolutely right to go like, it was the Pistons. That's sometimes what it takes. There's a reason that we call them get well teams. The Pistons are a team that you get well against. You get right against a get right team, right? You're supposed to get right versus the Spurs and they lost. You're supposed to get right versus San Antonio, but they got right versus the Detroit Pistons. Yes, they struggle with them. Yes, that's still concerning, but they got the win. They broke the streak. They got a road win, which I actually think is kind of a big deal. I would like to see them finish with some more road wins. They move closer to securing the number 1 seed in the Eastern or in the Western Conference. And I got news, because just checked it out. Denver Nuggets have secured a playoff spot. That's done. It's locked up. I did the math on it after I saw that NBA.com had listed them with the NW for Northwest Division in their little standings. The only way for them to be caught is if the 3 teams that are currently in the 7, 8, 9 positions in the Eastern, or sorry, I keep saying Eastern, in the Western Conference were to all win out and the Nuggets were to completely lose out. Then it would come down to a tie at 47 wins between the Minnesota Timberwolves, Dallas Mavericks, Oklahoma City Thunder. If any of those teams caught them, the Nuggets have tiebreaker over all 3 of them thanks to their division edge. I always talk about winning the division. They split 2-2 with the Wolves. Guess what next tiebreaker is? Division record. The Wolves can't catch. So the Denver Nuggets have that tiebreaker. They win the division. Same thing with the Thunder. They beat them in the head-to-head series this season, so they would win over them. If Dallas were to catch them, they split with Dallas 2-2 this season. Guess what second tiebreaker is? Did you win your division? In that situation, Denver would win the division. The Dallas Mavericks would not. The Denver Nuggets have clinched a playoff spot. So there you go. You've got it. The big takeaway from this game, I think, is just relief for them to get that win. But more than that for me, I think, is that they found momentum. And it was really thanks to Christian Braun, who was able to come off the bench and provide that kind of spark. Now, I do think that the rest of that bench deserves credit. Like Jeff, again, I think played really well. That second unit played with real aggression. A lot of the things that people have been asking for, that fans have wanted in this game, were the changes that were made as far as the lineup goes. Reggie Jackson did not play in this game. So Reggie Jackson, DeAndre Jordan, DNP CDs. It was a second unit of Bruce Brown, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in the first half, Jamal in the second, along with Christian Braun and Thomas Bryant, along with Jeff Green. So outside of Vlatko playing, which is the last kind of piece of the pie that Nuggets fans want, at least online, got the rotation that you wanted, and it brought the kind of things that you wanted, especially that second unit being able to actually win their minutes with Jamal on the floor, because that's been so bad, was actually pretty meaningful. And it says, like, hey, they were able to, like, you get Jamal out of those 2 guard lineups, you get out of the 3 guard lineups, and they're actually able to win. So regardless of how it happened, they were actually able to get it going and find some work. Jokic was sublime tonight. He was phenomenal. He was terrific. Christian made all sorts of plays that Christian can make. My commentary on Twitter about Christian, and I've tried to be very consistent with it, which is that Christian Braun is good. Christian Braun should play. I have said very consistently that I don't think Christian is like a savior. I don't think that he single-handedly fixes things. Was he a difference maker tonight? Absolutely, 100%. That bench unit's still going to have to play together and play well. They're going to have to figure this out, because Christian can't just carry you through games. Christian's not like putting up 15 points here. Christian does hustle plays, and that helps. He's an impact guy, but you're going to need to find production and some cohesion in order for it to work, or you're just going to wind up with like Christian played well, but the bench still lost by 15. Like, got to fix that. But you see, like, making it in there as far as being pretty good. Anta is complaining about the rotation. Still think 7 minutes before our first sub is way too long for the regular season. Let's talk about that in the second segment. Let's take a break. We'll come back. I'll get to the rotation, and we'll talk about that. And we'll talk a little bit more about the win over the Pistons to break the losing streak here on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I need to tell you about the Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. I'm really geeked out by our new partner and sponsor of today's episode. It's the mobile game Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. If you ever dreamed of becoming an NBA GM and managing your basketball franchise, your dream came true, and this game is definitely for you. Managing every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and assistants. How does that not appeal to you guys? Like, how does everyone in Nuggets Nation not want to have a game where you get to choose who the coach is and who the coach is not? That sounds like a dream right now. Trading and training players, you get to make draft picks, which obviously folks love young guys. Navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft and all the ups and downs of the season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Pro Basketball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Nuggets listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probasketballgm.com. Scan the code or look it up in the app stores. That's probasketballgm.com. Promo code, all caps, Locked On, LOCKEDON. ultimate basketball GM. Start your dynasty today. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us, making this part of your day. Matt Moore solo with you on a Thursday night, recapping the Nuggets win over the Pistons. Anta says, still think 7 minutes before our first sub is way too long for the regular season. Starters like to play with each other, okay? The Jokic minutes are obviously like crucial for everybody's numbers. Joker gets you assists. Joker gets you points. Joker gets you rebounds. Joker gets you plus minus. Joker gets you efficiency. Like, those are precious minutes. And so those minutes are going to go to the guys that make the most money. That's how this works. Second, I would tell you that some of this is, even if you're rotating out sooner, you're trying to basically minimize the hurt here, right? So if you go to the bench sooner, you're still able to be held up by Joker, but that also hurts your margin that you win by. Like, the ideal is that you win by double digits, which is what they've done all year. Is you win by double digits when Joker is on the floor. That's what they usually do. Okay. If you reduce the chances of that happening by playing in with slightly worse players, and people will say, like, he will be double digits with anybody. Not true. We saw that last year. Like, the margin was tighter, right? This is why I've been harping on the starters so much. The formula is not going to shift for this roster construction. The starters have to win by double digits. There's no getting around that. There's no really way around it. You cannot count on the bench having a night where it picks you up. You shouldn't. Your starters make $500 million. Okay? They have to win their minutes, and they should play together in order to make sure that they win their minutes together. So I don't necessarily think that they should change the rotation significantly. Brain Windhorst says, I hope Pistons get Wemby. I think K would be the best number 2 in the league when fully developed and everyone falls into place. There's a couple of teams that, if you're an opposing team in the Eastern Conference or really in the West, there's a number of teams that would be terrified if they got Wemby. The two biggest ones are Detroit and Indiana. Like, if Indiana gets Hallie to put with Wemby or Cade, that's going to be absolutely insane. Yeah, we're making all sorts of Christian jokes because I said Savior with Christian Braun. I get it. Yeah, I get it. It's not Easter yet. Nick says this, Matt, Brown's not the savior because of what he does on the court, but because of the bad combinations, you avoid the awful lineups of the last week. Yeah, I get that, because in my opinion, their best bench combo, and I've been on this for a while, when Jamal was out, they were staggering KCP, and I said I like the way that the Bruce Brown KCP minutes look. And so the Bruce Brown at point guard, KCP at 2, Christian Braun at 3, that combo makes sense to me. And I will say, I think it should be Vlatko. I don't understand why Vlatko lost his rotation spot. Like, I agree with you. Okay. As much as I'm the Malone defender around here and one of the few ones left, I absolutely do think that, like, Vlatko shouldn't have lost his rotation spot. He had worked hard to earn his minutes. Malone had said, I'm going with Vlatko. Vlatko gets hurt, and then he loses his role to Jeff. And to me, that's not how I get it from how the NBA works and operates. It's just, to me, even with Jeff playing well tonight, I think Vlatko deserves a slice of those minutes. It wouldn't hurt to go another guy deep. Like, they went 9 deep tonight. They could have gone 10. That's not a bad thing. A 10-man rotation with Jeff playing 10 minutes and Vlatko playing 8 wouldn't have been bad. That's not a terrible. And even if it's Jeff 10, Vlatko 8, I think it should be like Vlatko 12, Jeff 6. But I think you can probably get around that. So I think it's something to think about. Nick says, and he's right on this, Jackson and Murray on the court together means you have 2 offensive-minded guards at the same time. They're both dribble heavy. So what they contribute on offense is redundant at best. I agree. Just be prepared. You may need Reggie Jackson at some point in the playoffs. I just hope that we don't get this if it's like Bruce Brown's hurt and they got to play Reggie Jackson. It's like, why is Reggie Jackson out there? Well, you need a ball handler. It's one of those things that I think you do need still. Jeff has JK Walrus says Jeff has certain possessions though where I'm like, can he be that way all game in the playoffs? If so, it's tough. I know. We're gonna find out if Jeff can do it or not. We're gonna see if Jeff has the ability to have a game like that. I'll say this: I don't think Jeff needs to have every game. I think Jeff needs 3 games. If Jeff has 3 great games in the playoffs, I think you've gotten pretty good value out of him for what the margin should be. Which is, again, I want to go back to this: starters have to win their minutes. This is why I will just keep harping on this. I get that, like, if you're talking about the bench, it's not necessarily because you're like, that's why they're losing this game. You understand that it's the bench. I understand that. I do think you need to not lose the forest. The bench minutes ultimately do not matter half as much as the starters. And yes, there have been times, even in this last week, where it's been like the starters were still a slight positive and the bench was all double-digit minus. Just like the bench can ruin momentum for the starters and they come back in sluggish. We've talked about that for over a year here on the show. I will say the opposite is true too. If the starters are struggling, the bench can be worse. Like if you come in stale and cold and the other team has, because the other team has momentum, like they're rolling through the rotation and they feel like they've got it going. And now you've got a bench unit that's limited going uphill, But tonight the bench was able to get downhill thanks to a push from the starters. And like tonight was honestly like a really encouraging development from that perspective as well. Again, it's the Pistons, but the Nuggets played well in that third quarter, but they couldn't get over the hump. And that's when I was like, well, there goes that. Because if you're not up by the time the bench comes in, you're going to be down too much when the starters come back in. But instead, the bench unit carried that momentum that the starters had built but not been able to get ahead of, carried that momentum into the fourth quarter, and then the starters absolutely dominated to take care of the rest of the way. And that's, I think, really significant. There is a complicated connection here between we talk about them as independent units. They're all part of the same team. That's how they view it. Like that is how the team views it, is like, well, we were playing well and then we came in, those kind of things. Now, that doesn't mean that the starters there have been times this season when the starters have played great and the bench has killed it. Absolutely true. 100%. Still continues to be an issue, right? But if the starters don't play great, you're not setting up the bench for success, because the bench now is going uphill. You can't ever have the bench going uphill. You can have them going downhill and hope that they don't like completely crash, but you can't make them have to go uphill. And even then, I thought that their minutes were pretty good in that first half and in the second half. And again, this gets back into what was the big change. They removed the 3-guard lineups. Reggie doesn't play. Christian plays. And I'll eat crow on that. For this game, absolutely, I think you can say that, pardon the pun, Christian was the savior, because he did make that much of an impact. And like Nick said, it's about those lineups that they're not playing in these kinds of spots. Jamal still didn't look great, but got enough done. 10 assists is really good for him, and he had 6 boards. He contributed in a lot of different ways. He was a team high 21 in this game because he played with that bench unit that made the surge. So when Malone put him back in the second half in that second unit stagger, I was like, well, okay, I don't know why you're doing this after it worked in the first half with KCP, but then it worked out in the second half. So I don't know if you judge it as a good move or a bad move. I'll say this, I didn't think KCP was good tonight. And hey, he closed. He still came back in the 5-minute mark. He let Christian Braun get a long run, and then he still closed with MPJ. MPJ hit that 3 that was in the second half, in that fourth quarter, that was big. Didn't love MPJ's defense in this game. I thought he was slow on rotations, and that's sometimes can be a weak point if you put him on that side. He's been really good at that this year. Wasn't great tonight. And if you want to respond to that by saying, well, yeah, it's because he got benched. Okay, all right, sure. You're still going to need him to produce, whether Malone needs to fix that or whatever. But didn't love the play from MPJ tonight, outside of just the shot making at 6 of 14, like 15 points on 14 shots. But he did have 5 boards and 3 blocks for MPJ. So he was playing really hard on the inside. I did notice that. He was making the extra effort on the interior. KCP was phenomenal in this game. When they got KCP, I think there's a lot of people that kind of question if it was an upgrade, especially around the league. They thought that it wasn't an upgrade, and that was weird. KCP showed you what he can do tonight, and that really kind of picked up. Finally, another thing I want to say is, like, Christian had a play where he dug out kind of a loose ball situation after a rebound and kind of spurted out. Those plays that he makes when he does that are really pivotal for that bench unit. This bench unit is at its best when it runs. That's like the best thing I think that Bruce Brown and KCP lineups bring to the table, is they know that they need to run. They need to get stops, they need to create turnovers, and they need to get out in transition. And when they do that, that makes that bench unit a lot more effective. And I think that getting away from walking the ball up with Reggie trying to run set offense. They've done that, and they don't have any chemistry. They don't know what they're doing. They can't play that. They need to get back to a little bit more chaotic style. And so hopefully Malone rides the momentum after this, and that's what carries them forward. Let's take a break. We'll come back. I'll wrap up a little bit about where the Western Conference is at. We'll talk about the Nuggets playoff positioning and whether or not this game means that they can turn this around or not. We'll do that when we return. I need to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. The midway point of the NBA season is here. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on anything from the money line to points scored and threes drained. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. Don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Hope you feel better after the Nuggets finally get a win and break the losing streak. You know, I mentioned the Nuggets have clinched a playoff spot. Their magic number now for the #1 seed in the Western Conference, even with the Kings win tonight, as they just keep kind of rattling along, is down to 9. So good chance for them to go ahead and finish this. If they get, I don't know, let's see, out of their remaining games here left on the slates with 12 to play and a magic number of 9, the Kings have 13 left, and they're rolling. Yeah, they need to probably go. The Nuggets need to go like, 5 and 8 to get it done. So that's pretty doable. That's when you put it in those perspectives, that's when you start to feel like, oh, this is actually pretty doable, even if they've not played well. And they haven't, and that's okay. But they got to win tonight. Maybe they can kind of grow off of that. They face the Knicks next on Saturday. That's an early game. Danger spot there. The Knicks are a really good team. They're balanced. They play well on offense and defense. If the Nuggets do not turn the corner, if they don't carry the momentum forward, they're going to lose that game. I can't sit here and tell you that like they're fixed, right? Because they did play badly throughout the majority of this game. Like they were losing this game, and then they rediscovered themselves and really put on the Jets and did what they do in the clutch time. You know, when it got serious in that fourth quarter and they had momentum, they took advantage of it. They may face adversity again in that Knicks game, and they're going to need to play well to just give themselves a chance. If they play like they have been, the Knicks will blow them out. That's how good the Knicks are. They do face the Nets the next day in the matinee. Feel a little bit better about that one. The Nets shot the lights out and had a lot of things going for them in the win in Denver. I tend to like teams in their second matchup if it's within a recent time period. So I kind of think that they win that one. I would say probably 1-1 over this next two games is probably likely. And then that final game on the road trip is versus the Washington Wizards. That's another test for them. Look, they won this Detroit game, but if they go 0-3, we're right back where we started, where they will have lost 7 of 8. So it is not okay to let up off the gas. They got to carry this forward because the effort tonight still was pretty bad for honestly three quarters, maybe 2.5. They started to turn it on in the third quarter to get it around. Nick says, don't they generally struggle when they play effectively morning games, Colorado times? Most teams do. I think it's harder for teams that are traveling, right? Because you're just like your body clock's all off. You know, it's a weird time to be playing basketball for you when you have a pretty set schedule. So let's talk a little bit about where the Western Conference is at. Some interesting developments over the last couple of days. And so I want to look at the standings just a little bit. The Nuggets are still likely to get the 1. The 4-5 is evolving. The Suns are still up. They won tonight versus the Magic. They're still up 2 over the Warriors in the loss column. But they're only up 1 on the Clippers, and they're only up 2 on the Warriors, and they're only up 3 on Minnesota. I think the Suns still wind up in the 4-5 matchup. I still think that the most likely Denver Nuggets second round opponent is probably going to be the winner of Phoenix versus the other team in the 4-5. But that could be Clippers now, which would be a pretty ideal matchup because I think the Clippers match up well with Phoenix, even with KD. And the Nuggets obviously would much rather see the Clippers than the Warriors or the Lakers or any of these other teams that might be in that second round matchup. As far as the 7-8 spot goes, it's now Wolves and Mavericks are tied. Lakers, Thunder, and Jazz and Pelicans. We got 4 teams tied at 36 losses. We'll see how this works out. I will just tell you, like, there is as good a chance. The play-in throws a lot of this into chaos. You can't just be like, oh, they'll definitely win the play-in. You have a bad game and you're out. Everyone expected the Warriors in instead of Memphis 2 years ago. Nope. So I would tell you there's a very good chance that the Nuggets, like, there's just as good a chance that the Nuggets get a Dallas team or a Wolves team or a Clippers team or a Thunder team as there is that they get the Lakers. Is it possible they get the Lakers? Does it seem narratively likely they get the Lakers? Yeah. The Lakers might slide up in the 8-7 and then beat Minnesota and get the 7 spot, right? So there's a lot of ways that this kind of works out. Leo Clayman says, why is Malone still playing Jeff over Vlatko? I addressed that in the last segment. Don't really know. Don't think he should be. I think it's basically that he need, like, the veterans in that. I will say, like, the veterans on the team trust Jeff. They do. I think they like Vlatko. I think they trust Jeff. I think Vlatko should play, but I will say that Jeff was good tonight. So tonight's not really the night to complain, Leo. It's like a lot of nights. Don't worry. Next game, when they lose to the Knicks and Jeff's like a minus $1 million and grabs 0 rebounds, you'll have your chance again there tonight. Aaron says, sucks that the Suns won tonight. Would like them to finish 6th in the West. Maybe. Joe asked, what kind of books are on that shelf? My wife bookscaped this. She literally went through and made sure that the books that I value most are prominently produced. These are almost all entirely basketball books, except for a few of them that are my favorites. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify, you're like, I can't see this, Matt. The last thing I want to kind of get to on the show before we get out of here, Adam, I'll be back on Friday morning, by the way. We're doing a Friday morning show, so you're going to double dip. You'll get Adam's thoughts on the Pistons win. We'll talk about the weekend ahead, the 2-game set versus the Knicks and the Nets, all these ones. The last thing I kind of want to say is it is possible that the Nuggets have lost it, that they'll never get it back, that they're going to completely slide into the playoffs and lose. I brought up this comp on Twitter the other day, and I think it's apt. The 2014 Pacers. So the Hawks are a team that the Nuggets have been compared to. That's not really fair because the Hawks were a team that was built very much on team-centric play without a true superstar. And while the Hawks team was really good, I just don't think it was as good as this Nuggets team is. Also didn't have the playoff success that this Nuggets team has had. They've made a conference finals, which everyone forgets. But that Pacers team had already made a run in 2013. Like, they were already dangerous. They had David West. They had Paul George playing at a very, very, very high level. Okay. They had Danny Granger. They had Lance Stevenson, who was actually really good then. They had Roy Hibbert, who was a DPOY. So they were great. They were elite. They were awesome. They were a real contender. Chemistry issues hit around All-Star, and they never recovered. They never were the same. After All-Star, they slid and they slid and they slid. And we were like, well, they're so good. And they never recovered. And then they barely got through to the Heat and they couldn't get past them, in part because they really struggled just getting there. Like, the Pacers really struggled in their playoff run because they just weren't the team that they were before All-Star break. Okay. There's a concern that that's this Nuggets team. I can't lie to you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everything is fine, everything is great. I'm also not going to sit here and tell you there won't be consequences. I've said this before. Like, there will be changes if they fail. For all of you that have wanted things to be different, if you want it that badly, you should root for them to fail because then those changes will come. But they're not coming before then. There will not be a coach replacement. There will not be a trade. Like, this is the team for the next 3 months, at least. However, I will also say this. They're not the Pacers. They're not the same team. They're not the same personalities. It's not the same coach. It's not the same market. Guys don't have the same agendas. This team gets to make its own destiny. And it is screwed around. for the last 2 weeks. They've absolutely screwed around for the last 2 weeks, and it has caused all of you a great deal of stress, and I appreciate that. Somewhere in there, and tonight was a good reminder of it, is still a really great basketball team. A team that was down multiple possessions, came back and not only won, but covered the 15-point spread with ease on the road versus a truly terrible team, but they still got it done. This team's awesome at home. This team has a high gear. This team is still somewhere. If you want to say they're not a contender right now, I can't disagree with you with how they've played, because eventually you are what you are. But they have the capacity, the potential, the ability to be a contender. Keep that in mind. Don't rule that out. It's okay to be upset and to be frustrated and to be stressed. That's part of being a fan. That's why we do this, is the good times and the bad. You're not in it for half of it. But those that are like, this is not a championship team, they're never going to win a championship. You don't know that. We just don't. Because a lot of teams we thought would never win a title until they did. So we'll see what happens. Thanks for joining us. Make sure to catch us tomorrow morning on the live show. Appreciate you guys being with us. Make sure to check out all the Adam stuff over at DNVR. Hope your brackets are going just great. Mine are already dead, predictably. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.